Let's talk cricket on the SportsMax zone. The 50-over World Cup qualifying tournament, Sri Lanka one win away from securing their berth at this year's 50-over World Cup in India, following a tense 21-run win over the Netherlands in their Super 6 clash earlier on Friday. Batting first, the Sri Lankans laboured to 213 in 47.4 overs, with player of the match Dhananjaya De Silva top scoring with 93. In reply, skipper Scott Edwards and Wesley Baresi led the Netherlands with 67 and 41 respectively, but the Dutch fell short of the target, being dismissed for 192. Though qualification is mathematically in West Indies' favour, Sri Lanka's win significantly hurts the Caribbean side's chances of finishing in the top two. The Windies will need to comprehensively win all their remaining matches, starting with Scotland on Saturday. Assistant coach James Franklin spoke to the media ahead of the contest.
You know, we're not out of this qualifying tournament. Yes, we've made it pretty tricky for ourselves, where we have to rely on other results to go our way, as well as controlling our own destiny in terms of winning the games that are in front of us. But we reflected as a group after that loss to the Netherlands. We had a couple of days off where we just had space and we could come together and put our heads together on what we wanted to achieve as a collective moving forward. And that starts with tomorrow's game. You know, it's upon every individual, it's upon us as a group to make sure that we not just carry ourselves, but we carry each other. We support each other, and we're confident that we will show you that through the next period of time, over these next games through this week. And again, I'll maintain that we absolutely respect who we're coming up against. And we know that we have to play our best cricket to put ourselves in the best position to win games. So that first opportunity starts tomorrow.
Assistant coach James Franklin saying all the right things at Lance Whitaker, but the West Indies having their work cut out in this ICC World Cup qualifying encounter against Scotland on Saturday.
Yeah, and given the current form of the team, we can't look past Scotland, because they've shown themselves to be a team that can trouble the more established teams in ICC cricket. And we have to make the point as well that whether the West Indies win on Saturday or not, if they win on Saturday, win against Oman on Wednesday and win against Sri Lanka next weekend, they may still not qualify. So they need to clear their thoughts and play their best game possible, all three games, and hope that results go in their favour. But at the moment, things look very, very dim for the West Indies.
So here's the thing for me, Lance.
Yes.
I have no doubt that man for man, this West Indies team is capable of beating the remaining teams that they have to face in this World Cup qualifying tournament.
Including Sri Lanka?
Including Sri Lanka. And I'm saying that even against the background of everything that I have seen in this tournament. And I'm saying that even though I strongly believe that we have shortcomings, some of which I've spoken about a lot on this show, including the fact that I don't think we have enough wicket-taking options throughout the course of 50 overs. While I think there is tremendous talent in the batting, I also feel we can be inconsistent. But as a batting unit, we've put the runs on the board so far this tournament. Maybe with the exception of when we batted second against Zimbabwe and collapsed under the pressure of chasing 266 runs in front of a capacity crowd. Having said all of that, though, I still believe that we have the ammunition as far as the talent is concerned, the physical abilities are concerned, to go out there and beat all three teams that we have remaining. What I am most concerned about, though, at this stage, is whether we have collected ourselves, whether mentally we have recovered, as you described them, as the mortifying defeats, especially to the Netherlands, but that would have come after the Zimbabwe defeat, and whether mentally they will be strong enough to pick themselves up and fight and look to get the better of these teams. Because as much as I think we can win these matches, they will not be rollovers. You still will have to go out there. You still will have to play hard. You still will have to fight. You still will have to execute really well if you're going to win these 3 matches. But I have no doubt we can win them. It's all about the mindset and the mental application for me from here on in.
Yeah, I agree with 95% of what you have said, Ricardo, because I am quite honestly not confident that the West Indies can beat Sri Lanka at the moment. Sri Lanka and West Indies are the 2 established teams that are playing in this ICC World Cup qualifying. Ex-world champions themselves. West Indies are ex-world champions as well, but they haven't won since 1979, so that is sort of immaterial because that is like a different generation. So I can't even, put that into the discussion.
Better you said it than me.
But I'm saying that the efficiency with which Sri Lanka dealt with these, I want to call them minnows,
yes,
because that's their image or their status in ICC level world cricket, but they haven't played many of them like minnows. Outside of the Netherlands game today, where there was a point at which they were still in the game against the Sri Lankans. The Sri Lankans have brushed aside these teams, Ricardo. They've brushed aside them, and the West Indies have made them look genuine challengers. So on the face of what we have seen so far in this tournament, I would suggest that Sri Lanka would be huge favourites to beat the West Indies. Let me say that I'm not saying the West Indies can't beat them, because I think on their best day the West Indies can. But I would have very little confidence based on what I've seen so far that the West Indies would beat Sri Lanka next week, Friday.
Well, let me say this.
Yes.
Right, Lance? So I never said that Sri Lanka would not start that game as favourites, because they would start as favourites. Okay. That does not mean I don't think that the West Indies can't topple them, because I think we can. I think we more than have the ammunition to beat the Sri Lanka team. Sri Lanka, to me, have also shown some level of vulnerability in their last 2 matches. The match against Scotland, yes, it was an 82-run victory, but it was, for the most part, a competitive encounter, and where Scotland and the Netherlands have been able to dismiss the Sri Lankans for scores of under 250, yeah, that shows a certain level of vulnerability to me. Yeah. Yes, the Sri Lankans have very good bowling, and especially in that outstanding spinner, Wanindu Hasaranga, 2 for 53 today, already 2 5-wicket hauls in the tournament. He provides a wicket-taking option, especially in those middle overs, yes, where you're probably looking to increase the tempo or whatever the case. He's able to take wickets and peg teams back, and you'd expect him to be dangerous. But having said all of that, when I look at this West Indies team, as I said, first of all, we haven't struggled with making runs this tournament. Yes. And although I think the bowling is not great, if you think about it, what has let us down more than anything else has been the fielding. You look at that Zimbabwe game. Yes, they made over 260, but they probably should not have gotten to 200 had we taken our chances. If you look at the Netherlands game, had we shown even a little bit of intensity in the field for 50 overs, the Netherlands batsmen were able to comfortably run ones when they should have had none. They were comfortably able to run twos when it should have only been one. And the West Indies played that, certainly in the field, having made 374, as if they had already won the game, and that is what cost us that match. So putting all of that together, I have no doubt that as a talent pool, we should be beating the teams who are left in this tournament: Oman, Scotland, and Sri Lanka. There is a reason Sri Lanka find themselves in this position, which is the same position we're in at this qualifying tournament. They can more than be beaten. And for me, it's all about whether the West Indies players can pick themselves up after the disaster of Zimbabwe and Netherlands and actually play some good cricket, especially when they're out in the field.
Yeah, understood, Ricardo, and you are right that Sri Lanka and the West Indies, because of their poor recent form internationally, find themselves in qualifying. But the major difference is that so far in Zimbabwe, Sri Lanka have played undefeated.
Yes.
And that's important.
But that can change.
They are showing,
but that
they are
can
showing,
change.
Ricardo, that they don't belong in the ICC World Cup qualifiers.
I don't agree. They belong there, and it showed against the Netherlands today. And yes, what Sri Lanka was able to do that the West Indies was not able to do was to take their chances, because the Netherlands could have gotten to that 214-run target today. But the Sri Lankans tightened the screws.
Yes.
And when there was a need to play clutch cricket, they played clutch cricket. That's what the West Indies didn't do. But Lance, and I have to be careful how I say this.
Yes.
But I think the West Indies are in this position because they have underestimated the teams that they have gone up against, and they have not played with the intensity that you need to play with to finish off cricket matches, or any sport for that matter. Lance, when you are not significantly better than your opponents, you have to play intense cricket, or if it's another sport, for long periods of time if you are gonna win consistently. You can't take your feet off the gas or your foot off the gas. The West Indies, in my opinion, underestimated their opponents, did not play as intensely as they should have for as long as they should have, and that cost them the 2 games against Zimbabwe and Netherlands. I put this to you, that if the West Indies played Zimbabwe and Netherlands 10 more times this year, they would win 9 of them. And the one that they would lose is because they would go back to underestimating them again.
I have a little difficulty with what you have just said, Ricardo, because,
please do tell us.
Because I'm suggesting to you, after what happened against Zimbabwe, how on earth can you go into a Netherlands match and underestimate your opponents? Because this is just a few days after.
But they didn't. They didn't go into that.
You just said they underestimated their opponents.
No, listen. They did not go into that Netherlands match underestimating them.
Yes.
They only started underestimating them after scoring 374. Having scored 374, they said to themselves, there is no way we are going to lose this match. And while they were in the field for 50 overs, they kept expecting the Dutch to give the match away.
All right, let me ask you a question, Ricardo.
And when it wasn't happening, they started panicking.
You've played a fair level of competitive cricket in your young days.
Yes.
You play exhibition cricket now.
Yes.
But if you were a West Indian playing against the Netherlands and you scored 374, would you think at that point that you had the game won? You, Ricardo Chambers.
I would think at that stage that I should win this game.
Is that is that the same as saying that you have won the game? You use the word should win the game. I'm asking you because you have accused the West Indies of relaxing because they scored 374.
Yes.
So let me put the question directly to you. Yes. So would you have relaxed? I'm asking you. If you were playing for the West Indies, would you, Ricardo Chambers, have relaxed?
I am not the West Indies.
No, but I'm suggesting to you that they're professional cricketers.
They're playing, I think about killer instinct. So
you have more killer instinct than the West Indies players in Zimbabwe?
Yes.
Oh, you do?
Clearly.
Oh, that's absolutely shocking.
Clearly based on what we saw, Lance. Clearly based on what we saw. I mean, forget the decision-making that would have hampered us in that game, like having Jason Holder bowling the super over. I won't even go any further beyond that. But yes, killer instinct was lacking. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in, because there is no way, no way we should have lost that Netherlands match.
I'm agreeing with you that they should not have lost the game, but I find it very difficult to digest the view that they lost the game because they underestimated their opponents.
Yes, that's why they lost the game. That's exactly why they lost the game, Lance. And I'll say it again. If they play that game 10 more times this year, they will win 9. And the one that they would lose is the one that they underestimated the opponent again.
Let's look at the Super 6 table as it now stands. The West Indies going into the Super 6 without a point. And they open against the Scott team on Saturday. Sri Lanka, at the moment, with 6 points, same as Zimbabwe. Scotland and the Netherlands both have 2 points. West Indies and Oman without a point.
So here's the deal. Sri Lanka or Zimbabwe will qualify for sure because they have each other to play. So one of those teams will go to 8 points.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
The West Indies, from this point on, they need to get to 6, where Sri Lanka, well, they can only get to 6, where Sri Lanka and Zimbabwe already are. And then from there on in, they hope that they have a superior net run rate. So they not only need to win from here on, but they need to win convincingly. And then they have to have a few results go their way.
Let me say quickly before we wrap the segment, Ricardo, that the confidence, I'm not sure if I should use that word because I don't know how much confidence you have in the West Indies, but the view that you're putting forward that you think the West Indies can beat Sri Lanka, and I'm not saying they can't.
Yes.
One of Sri Lanka's strengths going into this West Indies game is Hasaranga.
Yes.
He bowls the googly expertly.
Yes.
We have seen the West Indies struggle consistently year after year against tricky spin bowling. And I believe that Hasaranga will be the death of the West Indies in that game. Mark you, when that game is played, by then maybe the West Indies would already be out.
Which is the point I'm going to make, Lance. How the West Indies performs in that game is for me dependent on the situation they are in, because as you rightly pointed out, we could be out of the tournament
by that time.
But here's the next thing as well. From a West Indies standpoint, it would be a shame. It would be a shame if those men cannot pick themselves up and at least end this tournament on a positive note or on positive notes, because there are 3 matches to come. It would be a shame.
Significant that you say that as we wrap the segment, Ricardo, because our information coming out of the training camp is that the shoulders are drooping and the team doesn't look very...
What time is it, Lance? What time is it? We're what, less than 12 hours away from match time? Get some sleep, pick yourselves up, go out there and play some decent cricket, win the matches, do what you can do, control what you can control, and let the rest take care of itself. Worry not about what you cannot control, but control what you can. That's all the West Indies can do at this stage. Forget about everything that has happened, but I beg you, please don't go out like wimps.
The sound of a man who appears as if he's getting ready to wake up in the wee hours of Saturday morning to watch the West Indies taking on Scotland. I'm not sure I will, but I'm
sure you won't.
Back with more on The Zone after this.